If you've been paying attention to the YouTube community as of late, you'll know that there is a British citizen who is being held in Indonesia right now. He's looking at 12 years in prison because he had a gram of weed on him. Yeah, 12 years for a single gram of weed. Now, obviously, this is absolutely ridiculous. 12 years for a gram of weed on somebody. It's just insane. Now, the problem with the YouTube community on this is that they've decided to go out and advocate war against Indonesia. They've decided that Indonesia is now the worst place in the world, and have made videos attacking Indonesia and saying that it's a horrible place. It does this, it does that, blah blah blah, and blaming the whole Indonesian population for what their government is doing, which is completely incorrect. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever to literally blame the Indonesian people for what their government is doing to this British citizen. This would be like if people blamed all Americans for what happens with the bombings in Iraq and Afghanistan that have killed 3 million people. Now, I actually would make that argument and would say it is. But the people who are calling for the destruction of Indonesia and blaming the Indonesian people for this would also then turn around and say it's not the fault of the American people for the bombings that are being carried out. Frankly, let's call it what it is, genocide in Iraq and Afghanistan. Well, there's a bit of a hypocrisy here where it applies to one, but it does not necessarily apply to other. Now, these people believe that the American people aren't responsible, so that would be a completely different argument from what I would make. I'm just going according to their argument and what they would say. Now, I noticed this kind of mentality was actually quite prevalent leading up to the Iraq and particularly the Afghan war, where we have the events of 9/11 or we have the events of 7/7, where people would go out and they would say, look at these terrible things these terrorist groups in these countries are doing, and we hate you for supporting them, and we hate you for harboring them, and we're going to come in and we're going to get everybody in the country. We're going to get you for this. But we're not against you. We're here to help you, but this is your fault. I just noticed that it was the same kind of mentality that's going around. I'm just noticing the extreme hyperbole of this, the outrage that's been displayed. And there, of course, there should be outrage, because this is hardly something that's worth 12 years in prison. And it's absolutely ridiculous. But it's interesting to note the massive outrage against this, about what's being done to, what the Indonesian government is doing to one foreign citizen. Yet at the same time, these people have been quiet or even know nothing about the absolute genocide that have been carried by Indonesia on East Timor. I mean, you just Google search that one real quickly. I mean, these are huge, massive crimes against humanity, yet there's no word about them. One guy gets arrested with, a gram with like 2 joints, and he's facing 12 years, and there's this massive outrage. Yet, I mean, you have all these people who've died, and there's like nothing to say about them. I mean, this would be a real criticism. This would be a real reason to go and invade. Not now, but obviously when it was being carried out, this is the kind of thing that, people should be outraged about and say that Indonesia needs to be invaded for. Not this tiny thing about one guy facing a prison sentence. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, there's a very obvious diplomatic solution to this whole thing. Extradite the guy back to the UK, have him face whatever criminal penalties there might be for that, and then ban him from ever going back to Indonesia. I mean, it's not like the guy is, a drug dealer and you're essentially letting a drug dealer go. He's just one guy. Just one guy with like 2 joints on him. So it's not like he's an international criminal and you're letting a hardened criminal go or anything. It's just a guy who had weed on him. Although one could seriously question the wisdom of carrying weed on you or having weed on you when you know how insane frankly, Indonesia is with their anti-drug laws. I mean, he was an English teacher, so I think he was there to teach English. So if he was there to teach English, he would certainly have known about that ahead of time. So you can say that he's probably even stupid for having caused all this to begin with. But the point of this video is to call for, from their perspective, to call for the invasion of this is just insane. There's no need to attack Indonesia and go off about the Indonesian people and stuff like that. I mean, it's not... it doesn't make any sense. I mean, this guy has some serious responsibility, culpability on his part for having gone into the country and go around with drugs anyway, knowing that as a foreign citizen, he's going to be watched more than a regular person anyway. I mean, just to call for the destruction of Indonesia is just absolutely insane. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's literally on the level of the imperialist mentality of the First World right before the Iraq and Afghanistan invasion, where Al-Qaeda did this on 9/11, and they're in Afghanistan, so we have to annihilate all of Afghanistan and turn it into a parking lot, which we've heard a whole bunch of times. I mean, this is just the same kind of mentality, and it's not helpful. Write a letter to a consulate, write a letter to an ambassador, something like that. It's not necessary to call for the mass murder of an entire country over one idiot with a joint.